Welcome back, everybody. We're almost there. I think this is the penultimate chapter. I thought it was going to be the last one, but I'm pretty sure we're getting another one. Not sure if that one comes out on Friday or next Wednesday, which is weird because it's after release. But I don't know. We'll see how that goes. Right off the bat, I'm actually really excited to talk about this because, and it's going to sound weird, but it's not trash. It's not. It's not great, but it's better. Like, I think I have like a lot of good things to talk about in this chapter, so that'll be a little bit later. Just want to say thank you guys for just listening through all these. I've noticed in the YouTube analytics, the average viewer retention has gone up for these so much. So you guys are actually sticking around for the entire discussion. That makes me feel nice. It's like you guys actually care. And you guys want to talk about the story. And it's been lovely discussing with you all in the comments. Just one thing before we get down to the actual synopsis. And it's the giveaway that I'm running out for... I'm planning to open a set booster box either this Saturday or this Sunday because I have it pre-ordered on one of my LGSs, and I was gonna give away either the box top or any two cards that I open to whoever wins the contest on Twitter. And again, I'll link it below. You have, I believe, until tomorrow at noon to do the thing, so hopefully you guys rush in there and get it. It's not that many people, so you have a pretty good chance of winning. But anyway, I am going to go pick up the box hopefully this afternoon from when you're listening to this, if you're listening to this on release date. But the thing that I just want to discuss real quick is the price of said booster boxes have gone up for some stupid reason. I know the shipping delays have gone out, but like it's supposed to retail for $120, $125 a box. And they're sitting at like $160, $170 a box. And that is honestly a bit over my budget. So I just want to be really transparent here. If I can't get the box for $120, $130, that's kind of as much as I can spend on it. I'm probably just gonna do a regular draft booster box and open that on the channel. It's still gonna be the same. It's still the same box strip when you get any two cards that I open, but we'll see about that. Hopefully I can sweet talk my LGS into actually giving me the set booster box at the price it's meant to be sold at. But anyway, moving on to synopsis. So we start off literally right after what ended up last time. Akiri's falling off the skyclave down. She thinks she's gonna die. And Nissa catches her, and she meets Nissa and Jace as they're trying to go up the skyclave to get up close to Nahiri. And Akiri has this moment where she's seeing these two planeswalkers, and she actually learned what a planeswalker is called. And she just starts, like, her resentment towards anything outside of Zendikar just grows further internally, and it goes on for the rest of the entire storyline. And I'll get on that later, but that's very good. I like that. So anyway, they continue off. They end up seeing Nahiri in the distance. She's leaving the skyclave, heading out somewhere on the magical staircases. They try to stop her. They fail. She runs off ahead. Nissa, Jace, and Akiri are basically just talking. And Akiri mentions her friend that she wants to go find them because she does not want to be with these planeswalkers anymore. She just wants to get out. She does not feel comfortable or at home or safe with them. Which, really, I don't blame her. Almost everything negative that has happened to Zendikar has been because people from other planes have done stuff. But anyway, Nissa realizes that, Jace tells them where Nahiri's going. Nissa just dips out and runs at her because she just wants to go find Nahiri as fast as possible. Doesn't really care what Jace is trying to do. Doesn't really care what Akiri wants to do. So Jace tries to ask Akiri for help. Akiri refuses because she just really doesn't want to help them at all. Jace kind of talks his way into having her help him by reading her mind, which is morally questionable, but really it's kind of his thing, so I'll just give him a pass for it. We know Gideon wouldn't approve already anyway, which is funny. We haven't heard Gideon in a couple of parts. I wonder if he's going to come in at the end, if they just mention Gideon again when they're trying to peacefully close off everything. But anyway, so Jace and Akiri go after Nahiri. God, those names still confuse me. They're heading to some place called the Singing City, which is this big stone maze-like structure where Akiri is going to go because it's an ancient core location, kind of like I don't know if it's supposed to be sacred, but it's just a very important part of core culture, I guess. They're heading over there, and on the way, Akiri is barely speaking to him, and she mentions how people that go into those ruins go mad because of the voices or things that they hear. So Jace gets to the door, Akiri leaves, she's just like, I'm done, I'm just gonna go rescue my friends. Which, for the record, that is the last we hear of Aura and Kaza. They get no lines in this chapter. They are truly useless. But anyway, Jace goes in there. As he's trying to struggle through, he starts hearing these singing voices ring and belt in his ear. And it starts getting to him. He's getting very aggravated, very annoyed. and it's like physically hurting him, and he can't walk. He's trying to focus. So he starts realizing this is what they were talking about. These voices, this chanting, is what makes people go mad in these buildings, and it's probably why it's called the Singing City. So he casts a spell that apparently he's been planning for some reason, where he makes himself go deaf, so no sound goes in his ear, which makes me wonder why he was preparing a spell like that to begin with, and like why the author went out of their way to say that he's been preparing the spell for a long time. But anyway, so he runs up to Nahiri, and Nahiri's like on the ground. She's like completely beaten by this voice. He helps her out, and they telepathically talk to each other, and they kind of make like a truce kind of thing, where Jace explains to Nahiri that, look, if we get this core and we get it to where you want it to be, will you let me take it to Ravnica so we can study it, and then you can use it here if we deem it safe. And that's kind of the deal they go with a little bit. They run off into the center, where it's like the meeting point of like the core building that they're going at, where the core needs to be placed in for the power to be spread across the entire plane. But when they get over there, Nissa had already beaten them there and destroyed the stone structure that Nahiri is going to use to power up the core. Nahiri's angry, like livid because of this, because it's going to take her a long time to even magically rebuild everything that was destroyed by Nissa. Jace is now trying to mediate between Nissa and Akiri as to how they should best handle the rebuilding and rescuing of Zendikar, but Nissa is not having it. Nahiri, surprisingly, reluctantly kind of is okay with working with Jace, mainly because Jace just wants to revive the core at this point. And we're basically met with a very small standoff where you have Nahiri, who wants to bring the Zendikar from the past fully outward and destroy every elemental, because to her that is just a cost that she's willing to pay in order to revive her core life. Nissa wants to protect the elementals and the newer wildlife and nature that has grown from the royal after the core fell. Jace is trying to be peaceful and just trying to study this thing so he can use it to fight Nicol Bolas when he comes back, which, by the way, he might come back later. He will come back later, but I don't really expect that to happen for a couple years. But anyway, that's his motivation. He wants to get this orb over to Ravnica so he can study it and use it for the Gatewatch's purpose. So, they're about to fight each other when, out of nowhere, Nissa pulls out Ashaya, the spirit of Zendikar, and they start beating the crap out of Nahiri and Jace and Nahiri just end up having to run away out. They end up running up into the entrance where Akiri left Jace off the first time, and they kind of just both face down Nissa with dozens and dozens of elementals behind her alongside Ayasha, and the fight starts. And that's where the chapter ends. So I'm assuming the next chapter is just going to be the final climax of the story, and then the denouement and the conclusion and the after effects of what's going to happen in the storyline. So, synopsis over, let's get down to the analysis, because I have a lot to talk about. And real quick, we're just going to throw it out there because the author did as well. Kaza and Aura, like I said before, don't do anything. In the previous episode, I said that I theorized that they were going to be used as a method of saving Akiri, because it just seemed like they as characters didn't do anything in the expedition, and therefore they were probably just put in there after the fact as plot devices to save Akiri from the fall. But now they didn't even do that. So, I was surprised, which is more than I expected from the storyline. I was surprised that Kaza didn't save Akiri, but that's because Kaza didn't do anything. She technically wasn't even in this story. Her and Aura weren't in this chapter. They were mentioned, they were talked about, and they were spoken in like a flash forward when Akiri met up with them. Which, by the way, I think that means that Akiri's out. Akiri's not coming back for the storyline because of the way they sent her off. And I knew that she wasn't going to die because she's the main character, so I figured they weren't going to kill her off that quickly. And as a YouTube comment, I don't think it was a YouTube comment, I think it was a Reddit comment on the discussion board, pointed out that when Zareth died, they stated that Zareth's eyes would haunt Akiri's nightmares for months to come. So by reading that line in the previous chapter, we know that Akiri's going to live at least for the next few months. So there really was no shock there. We knew she was going to be safe somehow. But I think that's where I want to touch upon where I think A.T. Greenblatt's writing ability is. Because I don't think she's a bad writer. This chapter and the first chapter weren't really bad. They were okay, they were fine. They were what I expected a good magic storyline to be. It's not like great literature, but it's better than what I expected the magic storyline to be from before. So it's a step up. But we had chapter 2 and chapter 3, which were terrible. Like, I went back and reread them because I just wanted to refresh my memory and everything that happened and see if I missed anything, but they're just bad. And I think I fundamentally understand where the writing style is failing for A2 Greenblatt. And that is the fact I don't believe she, like, okay, I'm trying to phrase this correctly. Like, either A, she doesn't understand how to write fantasy group dynamics in the particular rogue, cleric, warrior, and wizard, which I don't fault her for. I don't think she's ever done that before, so it's not surprising in case she didn't understand how to do the team dynamics in a way that made everybody kind of like fit in together and have their own role and their own purpose. Even people that have been like DMing Dungeons & Dragons for years struggle making sure every character gets something done. So that could have happened. It could have been that it was an editorial decision for them to include every member of the party, because that would make a little more sense that the higher-ups wanted there to be a wizard, a cleric, a rogue, and a wizard. But A.T. Greenblatt, when she was writing the plot line, when she was planning it all out, she probably didn't want to tell a story about these 4 expedition groups, or if she just wanted to lean in more into the characterization of Akiri, Zareth, and Nahiri, which get a lot more characterization. Zareth, a little less, but Akiri and Nahiri get a lot of work put into them. Aura and Kaz, as we said before, had put no effort into them. So I think either she didn't know how to give them more attention or more time and more things to do, or it was more of an editorial mandate that she had to include them. This is something that you kind of learn to pick up on as when you study literature for as long as I have, or even like a fraction of what I have, is you understand when characters aren't needed, when you can remove them from the storyline and nothing changes. And if you were to take these 4 chapters that we've read so far, and take Kaza and Aura out, and not include them at all, nothing changes. The plot doesn't change at all. The characterization of Akiri and Zareth don't really change all that much. Akiri would have still hurt losing Zareth, and she didn't really lose Aura and Kaza, so they didn't really bring that emotional pull into it. Akiri mentioned how she lost an adventuring party before, but she could have felt that losing Zareth was equally as bad as losing that adventuring party. So they're really pointless characters, and now reading this again, rereading the previous chapter, I think either she didn't understand how to write a group dynamic well, but I'm leaning more into this was the higher-ups forcing her to write these 4 archetypal characters, and her not really wanting to. Like, I don't think this story was meant to be written for 4 people. It's very much the struggle of Akiri and Zareth and the moving of Zendikar's, like, grief. Kaza and Aura didn't really fit in, and they never really developed into the characters that most people were expecting them to develop into, because I don't think they were ever meant to be in the story to begin with, at least from the eyes of the author. But anyway, I'm talking in circles now at this point. Let's just move on from that. But what are your opinions on them? What did you expect her to do with Kaza and Aura? Do you expect them to come back at all after this point? Let me know your thoughts, because I think I've made the point of just, I don't think they're coming back. I think their place was filled, and I think A.T. Greenblatt was just trying to get them out of the way as fast as possible, because they were getting in the way of her main storyline. And that's kind of another thing I want to talk about. When she's writing Nissa, Jace, and Nahiri, it's a lot better than when she was writing the Adventure Party. And it's actually, it feels nice, and I get to understand these characters more, and it could be because she has a lot more history to work with that she can pull from. But the way those characters are placed out in the storyline are great. And actually, let's just start there. The big thing that stuck out to me when it came to reading this was the fact of how different Akiri feels to the actual Planeswalkers. And I don't mean this from just like their personalities, I mean just from their own power level. Like, the Planeswalkers are insanely powerful. We don't notice it all that well because most of the stories that we read are about Planeswalkers. At least in recent years it's been. So you get like their power level kind of matches around their own. You can have Jace, Nissa, the Gatewatch. Nicol Bolas is entirely separately with Ugin, but you see somebody like Vraska, somebody like Oko. Their power levels are roughly the same. So we're used to that standard. But now we're looking at stories that are being told from lower level characters, like Akiri, like Zareth, where they're just powerful on their own in the context of their story, of their home plane. So there's a very wide power gap that we have to acknowledge, and Akiri directly faces this power gap. She thought that the Eldrazi were these beings from outside, from another place somewhere, and they came to Zendikar, which is true. But she also blamed, like we saw in the previous chapters, she blamed the people, whoever they may have been, that trapped the Eldrazi in Zendikar to begin with. She has this growing animosity towards the Planeswalkers, that because of them, Zendikar is the way it is. Everything that's gone wrong with Zendikar has been because of Planeswalkers, and she's not wrong. She really isn't wrong. But it boils down to this conversation she has with Nissa and Jace, where she's starting to internally process and face this power imbalance. And I want to just read a little excerpt of it that kind of puts it into good words. This is her first impression of like Jace and Nissa. Akiri studied them for a moment. There was something about the pair that she wouldn't have recognized a few days ago. Something she always disregarded as a campfire myth. A sense of unspoken power. That they contained secrets as vast as the world, a feeling that they had one foot here, and the other somewhere else. Like Nahiri. You can travel to other realms, can't you? She asked, recoiling from Nissa's grasp. Nissa and Jace exchanged a look. You know about planeswalkers? Jace asked. The myths called you walkers. Planeswalkers. My demon has a name. I'm going to be straight with you. I think that part is my favorite piece of writing in everything I've read from A2 Greenblood. In all 4 chapters, that little excerpt is my favorite bit so far. Because it's true. Like, to them, to the people, to the everyday people of these planes, specifically Zendikar, these planeswalkers, there's no reason to respect them. Like, yeah, they see them as war heroes because they saved everybody from the Eldrazi, but they really didn't. The Eldrazi are still around. They just went to Innistrad, I believe. They didn't actually defeat them. And for people like Akiri, planeswalkers are just omens of destruction. They're no better than the Eldrazi. She mentioned them herself. And it's true, like right now, you as an individual, if like weirdly overpowered human beings from other dimensions came in and just talked to you, you'd be extremely unnerved and intimidated because that's just a level of power that you have a difficult time grasping, let alone accepting as another human being. Like, you wouldn't see them as human beings anymore. You'd see them as these otherworldly beings that don't understand and can't relate to you, because really, they can't. They have so much power that their context of what's good and bad and the context of what's normal and what's abnormal is different. And in the following scene, you can feel this with all of the responses that Akiri gives to them. For example, I've met Nahiri. She's the one who pushed me. She pointed up to the Skysclave. She noted that neither planeswalker looked surprised. They both were staring at the Murasa Skysclave. The fact that Nahiri basically tried to murder Akiri does not faze them at all. And that's terrifying to Akiri. And I understand, like, if you told somebody that somebody else tried to murder you and they were just like, yeah, okay, and they didn't even acknowledge it, it's terrifying. And you keep going on and on when you see her reactions to how they view Nissa's power, how she feels the entire plane bend to the whims of Nissa. It's unnerving, it's otherworldly. And her exchange with Jace is wonderful. It's not really that well, it's not impressively written, but just what's going on is impressive, at least. That's what I want to get across. So Jace, we have already understood, can read people's minds, and that was set up like 2 chapters ago when he read the mind of the lady in the guild hall, I believe. And so we have that set up. And we have a conversation where Jace is trying to get the attention of Akiri and the attention of Nissa and trying to plan out what they're going to do. And Nissa and Akiri are just talking to each other, trying to figure out where Nahiri's going to go. And Jace just tells them, because Jace read her mind. And to Nissa, she's like, okay, yeah, because Nissa knows Jace. She understands Jace's power level. Akiri, though, is blown away internally by what's going on. And not only blown away, she is really, really angry. This anger is wholly justified. She mentions it herself. She doesn't want people to go into her mind. That is her mind alone to have. She doesn't want her thoughts read. She doesn't want to accept the fact that these otherworldly beings can just read your mind with absolutely no effort. So much so that Akiri didn't even notice when Jace said it to her. And that little fake out where Jace is revealed to have been reading Akiri's mind the whole time was wonderful, and it actually caught me off guard, and I loved it. So, they basically talk to each other, and Akiri goes on to say, I'll take you to the entrance of the city so you can help Nissa, she said cautiously, but no further. Thank you, Akiri, Jace said with relief. If he was reading her thoughts, she found no sign of it as they made their way to the Singing City. It was only much later, after she reunited with Aura and Kaza at Sunder Bay, that Akiri realized she had never told Jace her name. And right there, at first I thought that Jace said her name here. No, the first time Jace ever said Akiri's name was in the previous page, where he asked her for help, and she said no, and started climbing up the fence. He then goes, Please, Akiri, Jace said, coming up behind her. You're not great at listening, are you? Akiri said, lifting herself off the ground. I've lost enough for one day. One lifetime. Zareth. And then Jace says, My apologies. I'm usually a distant listener. I've been trying, he said, it's been a trying few years, if I'm being honest. And it's a very awkward exchange, but that right there is when Jace said Akiri's name for the first time. And you can actually tell, as a reader, when Jace starts reading her mind, and it's the second she says no to him. The second that she says, no, I'm not going to help you, that's when Jace turned on the mind reading, because he was out of options. He was like, all right, asking nicely isn't going to work. I'm going to read her mind, see what she needs. And she saw her pull. Her hook was the fact that she cared and lost for her friends, and she didn't want to lose her friends like she did Zareth. Jace, not even knowing who Zareth is, understood that she had lost a friend already just today. So she used that hook in to be like, all right, I can help you look at your friends, and even tells her exactly where they were. I'm pretty sure he could have done that at any time, but he did it because he needed that hook to have Akiri help him. And that's a very big moral dilemma. I'm all up for it right now because Jace is desperate, and I understand why he's doing it, and he's not really peering in too much. But the concept of morality and consent when it comes to how you read people's minds, it's a fantasy trope that's been played a lot. It's why a lot of people say that playing a bard in D&D is not ethical. It's just weird if you do it the way you're, quote-unquote, supposed to do it. But anyway, that little exchange, that entire portion of the story, it's why I've been at this for like 11 minutes. This whole portion of Jace, Nissa interacting with Akiri and Akiri's reluctance to even accept them as beings. Because at the end of the day, Akiri leaves because she understands she's out of her league. She sees the power of Nahiri. She sees the entire planet she's living on bend to Nissa's whims. She has her entire mind read and just violated by Jace, where she wants to leave. She's had enough. She understands that they're way out of her league, and she said to herself, she spent enough time with them. She needs to go find her friends. And that's it. And that's also why I don't think we're going to see Akiri after this. Because I think that was a big point in Akiri's life, and that's a big point in this story. Like, that Akiri just knows she's out of her league, hates these planeswalkers for being so powerful, hates them for being outsiders. Even though Nissa's from Zendikar, Akiri doesn't feel that she's part of Zendikar the way she is, because she's not an everyday person. It's kind of like how we would look at millionaires or like super powerful people and not really think of them as equal to us, because they're really not. Their experiences, the amount of power they have, it just makes them functionally different. It makes their ideologies, the way they behave, the way they speak, functionally different. Fundamentally different is what I'm trying to say. So I get that, and I like that Akiri will not come back. If Akiri doesn't come back for the final story and doesn't come back at all, I'll respect the author so much for that, because that's a very good point to have, and it's a point that I like that they're bringing it up with these planeswalkers, and hopefully this keeps being brought up later on as we move on. It was brought up a little bit in Ravnica, if I remember correctly, but we'll just see how it goes from here. Before we move on to me praising the ending of this storyline, I just want to talk about some inconsistencies. Not inconsistencies, but just some things that really didn't make sense to me when I was reading this. Like I said before, why does Jace even have a death spell prepared, or like he was practicing it? There's really no point for that. It's really convenient that it just happens to be exactly what was the solution to the Singing City. And then if this Singing City is a core stronghold and it's meant to be made by core, and I'm assuming this kind of spell was created by them, why was Nissa immune to it? Or why was Nissa not affected by it? Why were her elementals not affected by it? They're not part of the royal... It wasn't a naturally produced landscape, so I don't think she can tap into the ley lines here as deeply as she would anywhere else. But yeah, I feel like Nissa should have been affected by him, at least somewhere, at least she would have acknowledged it somehow. But anyway, those were little things that I didn't like, that didn't really make that much sense, but I understood the purpose to move the narrative forward. I've already gushed about the previous interactions between characters so much, because that was the best part of this whole chapter. There was also one typo when when Jace and Nahiri interacted for the first time. Actually, a little pronoun typo where where it says, Nahiri turned and faced her, scowling. This from the person who released the Eldrazi on this plane. She's talking to Jace, and she turned to look at Jace. And I actually had to double back because I thought that Nissa appeared randomly here. But no, she didn't. She was talking about Jace. So that little typo was in there. I'm not sure if it got patched out as the other typos were beforehand. I haven't gone back and checked, but maybe I will later on. Anyway, so that's really all of the negatives I found out so far. When it comes to Aura and Kaza, I've spoken about that enough. It's I don't think it's so much a negative on her as it is just the overall editorial staff. And anybody who has read a lot of comic books or has read a lot of literature, you'll know that editors just mess up creative ideas all the damn time. So you kind of just gotta get used to it. But now, the final battle was the final battle. So not the final battle, but like the final act of this, it's fine. It was an action scene, and it made sense. It didn't feel rushed. It didn't feel sluggish. It was fine. But now I just want to take the last whatever minutes I got left to talk about the ethical dilemma we got going on here. Because Nahiri's painted out to be the villain here. And a lot of people will say that Nahiri's the villain. Even I say Nahiri's the villain. But I don't really like Nissa either. I don't like her philosophy. I don't like the way she's handling this. She's going on pure raw emotion and spiritual connection. Like, she just wants, like, the elementals are her people. They're what saved her. she feels the grief of losing her people already. She lost most of her tribe, now she's going to lose the elementals. It's all emotionally driven. She feels this level of anger, this grief that's pushing her forward. And why was she not red in the card? Like, they made her Golgari because that black is supposed to be the grief in her, and there's a sense of selfishness to her wanting to keep Zendikar the way it is because it's important to her. So I guess that's where the selfish black comes in. But I think it would make a lot more sense to have made Nissa Gruel. This is because the amount of emotion that's driving her actual motivations, most of it is driven out by the emotions she feels, the grief she feels. It's all red. She makes a lot more sense as a red-green planeswalker, but I guess that would cut in thematically in the color pie. Would then have like a blue planeswalker, a red-white, and a red-green. You would have no black planeswalkers, but like that's fine. Just it doesn't matter. I don't think it matters. These are mythic cards. They wouldn't have messed up Draft or Sealed, and not like people are playing Draft or Sealed right now anyway. So I don't know. I think she would have better as like a green-red planeswalker, to be honest with you. Anyway, so we have that. I don't like that because this power in the core, I don't know if it's the blue side of me, but I think that Jace has the best idea here, to just take it somewhere where it can be safe. Because now people are going to say, like, oh, well, what right does Jace have to bring a very dangerous artifact to another plane to study? What if something goes on wrong in Ravnica? They've already had enough destruction. Well, I'm asking this. If Jace takes this back to Ravnica, the Izzet Guild and the Dimir are going to love it. The Dimir are going to study it, or they're going to eavesdrop on all the research, and the Izzet will not care. This magical orb that kills everything within a 20 feet radius is right up the Izzet's alley. That's no different than like a giant explosion. They would research the hell out of it. I'm pretty sure Niv Mizzet would fund some of it. Ral Zarek might fund some of it. I think he's still around. I don't know. I didn't read the story. But it would have been fun. I feel like I'm personally more in the Jace aspect of it. I would very much take this thing to Zendikar, take this thing to Ravnica, study it, figure out what the best way to use it is, and then maybe use it to heal Zendikar, or maybe find a different way to heal Zendikar, or figure out a way to stop the Royal and not kill the Elementals, or something, I don't know, but Nahiri and Nissa are on two opposite extremes. Jace is in neither extreme, but he's not in the middle either. He's also having his own little selfish thing to use to fight Nicobolus. So, I don't know who's going to win. I don't think anybody should win. I would honestly still feel that it's a cop-out if they somehow heal Zendikar and bring back the core and not kill the Elementals. Like, something has to give. So, I like that. I am actually unsure where this is going to go. I don't know what's going to happen. So, what are your predictions? How do you think this is going to end? Because I don't know. I honestly don't know what's going on. Ashaya looks extremely broken, so Nissa might win just off of that. But then there's no tension. If Nissa wins like that, there's no tension, so there's no reason to make a fifth part. So we'll see how that plays out. Anyway, thank you for listening. I think I rambled a little bit much on this one, but that's just because I had a lot. I like this, and I had a lot to say about specifically the power imbalances, because I like that. I like that kind of storytelling. But anyway, that's it for me. Hopefully you like this. Stick around for the box opening as soon as I can get my hands on a box for not $175. And that's it for now. Bye, everybody. Bye.